April 3rd to order at 6:32. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Peter Talbot.
Here.
Jim Jenks.
Here.
Dina Allard. Here. Patricia Kramer. Fiona Pearson. John Malone.
Here.
Greg Wolf.
Here.
Don Walsh.
Here.
David Belber.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Probably shouldn't close, because they have a meeting across the hall, but I don't want to close it completely. It's up to you, Peter.
Yeah, you could kind of prop it maybe.
Yeah.
Chair.
I was- yeah.
Oh yeah, we could open this one.
We could open this one and close that one. Yeah, there you go, Andrew. Yeah, get some circulation. Yeah, that's perfect. It's not gonna stay, but you'll have to stand there and just hold it with your hand.
I'm good.
All right, tonight we're gonna look at the proposed fiscal year 25-26 operating and capital budgets. First item is debt service, and then we'll dive a little bit more into capital as well. So I'll turn it over to Jim, who will turn it over to Sean.
Yeah, here you go. Oh, perfect.
Good handoff.
Yep. Yeah, so just as an update, as promised on Tuesday, yesterday we had our bond sale issuing technically $60 million worth of debt, $40 million of bonds, and then $20 million of what's called bond anticipation notes, which come due in 1 year, which kind of get feathered into next year's formal bond issuance for the remainder of, almost exclusively for the remainder of the amount that we need to fund the two new schools. And it was I think it was a good sale. I wouldn't say it was, confetti from the ceiling, celebratory. And part of that becomes what we have budgeted and how we've kind of assumed and hedged and watched rates move as over the last few months since we first started projecting these. So we did get a rate of 3.6% on our $40 million. By comparison, I think last time was 3.3. Is that about right, Jim? The last issuance a year ago.
Yeah, 3.37, I think it was.
3.37. So in the
Was it
ballpark.
40 million or 60? that
So
you did?
40 million on that, and then you get
Okay.
a different rate, it's a different sale on the bond anticipation notes.
Okay.
It ends up, because they're due in 1 year, we end up paying. It really, for long-term planning purposes, gets factored into the next issuance, which I'll end up showing some charts, kind of showing the projected debt service. And remember, as much as we're about over $2 million of this year's, the planned year, fiscal 26's debt service is associated with the two new schools. We have 2 successive years of increases to that till you kind of hit your peak of debt service for the schools. And the way we amortize things, it peaks and then it smooths down, over the next 40 years, over the next 20 years. So we were budgeting 3.5%, so we were kind of right on, pretty close, within 10 basis points of our projection. So what that means is we don't get a huge windfall, though, of relief just from the rate. We did get, as I predicted we would, although I thought we'd get a little higher, we got bond premium, which is really just a function. It's a financing function that smooths out the coupon rates that the bond investors are ultimately reinvesting and selling the bonds at higher coupon rates, and then offsetting with upfront cash to the town. This happens every year, usually over $1 million. This year was $1.9 million, so that's cash that we've gotten in. We do have to account for that difference in what we budgeted for the 3.5% versus 3.6%. So right off the top, we have to use about $170,000 of that to kind of bring our rate back down to the line that we've budgeted. But you have about 1.7 million, and I know these are round numbers, Jim, but
Yep.
about 1.7 million that we're adding to our debt service reserve fund. And that already has about what's the balance right now, Jim? I know you have it on there.
It's
A little
about
bit
4
million.
Yeah,
So
so this would add.
round numbers, about 5.7 million in the debt service reserve fund. You'll recall in years past, I'll pull up an older version on the screen, not for any great detail, but it'll just as a reminder of how we've used some of these in the past. And I know Jim is still kind of updating this with the sale that we only got the information about 24 hours ago, but We have gross general fund debt and projections. Don't get too alarmed by these out here, because those are, again, the ones that include the full capital improvement plan.
Right, and I'm gonna wanna update those too for you all, like when we get more into the capital budget and where we land on the capital
Right.
budget, but
Hopefully-
those were like more or less last year's projections. So
Right.
I wanna put a lot of weight in it.
Right, and so we'll end up you can kind of roll these all up to what we call offsetting resources. In the past, we've used some of this bond premium, we've amortized it over a number of years. Last year, though, we did use 270,000 of that bond premium from last year's sale. And so similarly, as I just said, here we're going to need to at least use the 175,000. And I would say, in terms of some budget flexibility we have, there's probably tolerance within that 5.7 million that we have to use another 200, 300, maybe aggressively even $400,000 or $500,000 of bond premium. Just remember, the real way to bend that curve is going to be to approve less capital. But we have, just like any other reserve fund, you have, kind of like our general fund appropriation, you have that money available, but you're also kind of taking it from future years if you haven't smoothed it over all 20. But again, in this case, we've talked extensively about having about a 2-year gap to try to fill, so that can justify using some of that from the debt service perspective. But again, I
was just gonna say, I think there's some argument to front loading a little bit, because you are paying more, debt service, the way we amortize, the interest gets less each year of the 20-year amortization.
we have a pretty aggressive amortization. So it's, again, this all needs to sort of be updated with yesterday's information, but I think we'd want to use, given, the budget situation we have now, I think we'd want to use a little more of that premium up front and take care of some of that off the top at the beginning.
Does H take into account previous bond sales that have been utilized?
H hasn't even been. I think
So
it was
where's
just created
the
as a-
94,207 for 10 years coming from?
So that
or
would
for the
be.
9
So you
years?
see my formula there, actually, I had a 1.8 million there, Sean, that should probably be more like 1.7 million to divide out, but.
He's simply taking the
Okay,
amount we
and
got
spreading
yesterday,
it out over
divided
the.
over 20 years, right? Which would be the most conservative thing to do.
I wish I had 20 years on here, but I don't.
Yeah, it's only got the first 10 years. But in terms of an available resource and kind of front loading some of the premium, I think that's definitely something to strongly consider.
So is there an opportunity then to not just spread it out over the 20 years, but to put it in the first in other words, load the money into the first 5 years, because by then we'll start seeing revenue from the north end.
Mm-hmm.
And what sort of problems does that create?
I mean, the only, I guess I'll pull up. there's no real
Especially if
problems.
we're gonna be pretty careful with capital
Additional
spending
capital.
for this year.
Right.
And that's very important.
I think that's a really important
Yeah.
side of the equation. But so yeah, I would say, and I can pull up a different. Well, yeah, give me a second. I'll pull up a different chart just tracking the future. I think we should be aware of the future debt service on the two schools. And so if you give me a second, I can pull up. I think it's in. See, I don't think I moved it over to the. Here we go. Which is what I was creating today. All right, so I'll explain this. Well, actually, I'll just start with it. So the existing debt that we have, the bonded debt that we have now, are the black columns here. And what we did is we sort of teased out just the amount that we're having to borrow to build the 2 new elementary schools only. So you'll see in fiscal 24, which is right here, if you look really closely, there's this tiny little yellow sliver
Yep.
right there. That's because we borrowed $3 million in 2023, the first payment for that being in fiscal 24. And again, $3 million over 20 years of borrowing, and interest only in the first year is just a sliver of $87,000, it says there. And then you see the yellow is the cost of that 3 million over the next 20 years. Red being the issuance in February or March of 24. That was a $12 million issuance, bringing our total borrowed for the two schools to $15 million total. So that's the red cascading line. Remember, nothing in the future assumes any other capital. This
Right.
is sort of an unrealistic zero, but we pump the brakes completely on all capital. But just to see what we have on the books and knowing we have to build the two schools. We're already well into that. So the blue area here is what we issued yesterday. The first year, next year in next year's budget, which is fiscal 26 right here, we have to pay an interest-only payment of about $1.3 million. Then that portion, that's again of the almost $40 million we issued yesterday for the schools, it's about 3.3 million. But you also see how those start to get smaller as you get further out. It was 3.3 million out 10 or 12 years. It's down to 2.3 million of a payment each year. And then again, we're back here next year borrowing another 35 to 36 million, depending on where the final project costs.
Which is the green on the
Which
top.
is the green,
Yeah.
first year interest payment, and here. I also added a line that tracks 10% of budget, and again, just 10% of an assumed 2.5% budget increase in some of these out years. We don't have budgets tight. But you can see that we start to cross, by next fiscal year, we're crossing that 10% goal of ours.
And just
we knew that.
Just explain why that's important.
Yeah, so I mean, it's important. It's part of our debt service policy to maintain it at or below 10% when possible. We talked about this extensively a couple of years ago when we approved the two school projects, that we knew briefly we were going to be above that. The concern is, and this will really tie into capital, that we can't, as you can see, we're scraping above 10%. If you add another couple of $1 million because you borrowed another $20 million for more capital projects, you're going to have an ever increasing problem. So we really do need to get the capital budget back into a more realistic, smaller amount during this time that we have added burden of debt service.
So Sean, just remember, when you built this, I don't believe you took into consideration any of those offsetting reserves
That's
on
correct,
this
yeah.
whatsoever. So
Yep.
even though it's going over the line, know
Yep.
that
Yeah, it'll
we
come
were
back.
planning on using debt service reserve to
Right.
keep us.
Yeah, back to that other chart you recall, and back when I started here, we were heavily using offsetting resources. We had the settlement from the prison, we had other things
Yep.
where we were using $3 million a year to make our net debt service as low as possible,
Yep.
even though the gross was higher. This is a gross number, and to Jim's point, it will be lower because we'll use some offsetting resources. We just talked about using bond premium in some number, $300,000, $400,000.
Bond premium, and I think the WPCD is paying an additional $650,000 approximately
Yeah.
per year, and that was something that was decided on a long time ago.
And that's towards the plant.
It's a part of the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite cover it all, but it's also a good reminder, as we do have one-time infusions, whether it's from selling property or settlements or anything else, it's always a good practice to move those funds over into our debt service reserve fund and then pay these down. Whether it's we sell the school property or anything else, it's a great place to help, bend the curve.
And then just for clarification,
Sure.
this does not take into account any projects that have not been bonded yet, that may or may not be on the books.
That's correct.
This
Right,
is
don't have
only
too many.
bonded.
Right.
So if we do go through and start cleaning up capital projects that have been sitting out there, it's not gonna unfortunately bend that curve, is what I wanna.
Yes, unless there are bonded projects that we can deauthorize that were bonded that have cash and you can move them.
Oh,
to
that
other
you,
bonded.
yeah, that you finalize
Or
or
CNR
whatever.
accounts, which we have.
Yeah.
I did bring all those tonight. I didn't know if we were going to get into. I know it can be a lengthy process to go through all of those capital items, but just to get at least a snapshot, I was going to distribute the current status of a lot of those older capital accounts. The same exercise we did last
Yeah.
year. We have the Board of Ed, so I have all of those for both CIP
Yeah, I think
and
that's a
CNR.
good.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
That chart you had up before, can you just go back to that for a second?
Oh yeah.
Because you have the projected budget over the next 20 years there too. So you're projecting, and that. How do you project that increase? Is it based on a history of what we've done, or what?
No, you can adjust it to anything you want. I just created a column over here with our actuals up until fiscal 25. This is this year's adopted budget, 139. This is what I proposed. Granted, that's a high number right now.
Right.
That'll come back down. And then I just put a 2.5% assumption. If you change that to 1.5%,
That would be nice,
Yeah.
wouldn't it?
yeah,
You're being
it'll change all these.
awfully optimistic on that.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to go too far in the other direction. Otherwise, certainly if you put 4.5 there,
Make sure
it's gonna
across
make-
the street sees that too.
right. But if you do something like put 4.5%, again, compounding, you're going to see that line, shoot up. Well, hold on a second. Is it doing it?
Which is
Refresh it.
which is a dangerous thing for us too, because then
Yeah.
that percentage that dollar amount goes way up.
Right.
And
I have to refresh this. That should have gone up more. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, that you can see that's how it was initially built. I might just have to refresh this slide. But yeah, it's an assumption.
Yeah,
right
because
here.
you're up to 400,000, and it's
400.
only showing
400 million. But yeah.
but it's only showing
Yeah.
the 10% is
Yeah,
well
it's just
below.
refreshing. Yeah. So.
so like Peter was saying, if we top load it the first 5 years, assuming that by then the north end, do you have projections of did you build that into this curve up there, or
About what? Sorry, say that again?
with you projected? I mean, if you would, what are the projections increase in revenue for that development in the north end?
Oh no, that's not built in.
But we haven't. So we don't really. I think in order to determine whether we top load it, we'd have to have some kind of projection, right? I mean, to know how in 5 years how much more tax revenue will we be taking in?
Oh, we know that. I
Yeah.
mean that. Oh yeah, that projection's about $5 to $5.5 million. Once fully
$5 to $5.5 million.
once
And
the
we'll start
CEA
to see that in 2 years.
Right. So I'd like to see how, if you add all of that, and I would like to see how that would affect everything too. So I mean,
Well, it's tough to reflect it on this because
because this is the,
this is, and
These are just-
that's
yeah,
capital as
that's-
opposed
yeah.
to operating revenue. So
Well, I mean that's just straight tax revenue,
Straight tax
general
revenue.
fund. So these are
Right.
just expenditures. So it's hard to
So-
offset it there.
So the
But-
expenditures you have going up are roughly, well, you just changed it to 4.5,
Right.
but
No,
Yeah,
it's back.
but-
It's
but-
back to 2.5. But I
2.5,
think
but-
you see the gaps between the lines. I mean, to the extent you wanted to say that all of the revenue from the north end is sort of earmarked to pay for debt service, each of these bands there is $5 million. So you would see the effect, of the offset, so to speak. I mean, those are still the numbers you're going to have to spend.
Right.
It's just your source of funds now includes $5 million more than it did the year before, but
And
it
then
doesn't continue to do that.
and the TIF is what, 7 years, is it?
7 million.
7 million.
7 million?
7 million.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
But that'll be paid off in 2. That's why I say we'll start to see the full north end revenue in 2 years because the TIF will be paid.
right.
Yeah.
So it's 7 million they have to pay in the first couple of years, and then,
Yeah.
That doesn't extend out, Sean? Those
What's that?
payments don't extend out over past a couple of years?
The CEA payments?
Yeah, yeah.
Once it's paid off, they're done. The
And it's paid off,
obligation
and
is
you've
satisfied.
scheduled to pay off in 2 years.
Well, it's scheduled to pay off once the account has generated $7 million. And certain benchmarks are hit.
and some of that 7 million though could be used towards some of the capital improvements that we might need up there too, correct?
no, that's the developer, 7 million.
7
developer
million,
already-
already
well, that's going back to the developer,
But
yeah.
we have
Yeah.
monies that
We
will
have
be
the TIF
going
money
into
that we will
our
have,
TIF,
yeah.
the town TIF,
Yeah,
that
we
could
could-
be used.
Okay.
That's right.
And what's the percentage, Sean? How do you break down the percentage?
75-25.
That's what it is?
75 goes towards the TIF and 25 goes into an account that the town council can utilize however it wants.
nothing goes to tax revenue then, until it's paid off 100%.
Yeah.
So the 25% could go to tax revenue then?
The 25% does go
It goes to the
to
general.
the general fund now.
Yeah.
Goes to
That
the general
happens
fund
now.
now, okay. What are you saying about that other portion that goes into a town account for the TIF? I don't understand that.
Yeah, so 75%.
Of non-CE, non, credit enhancement agreement parcels within that TIF district, 75% of that will go into a town TIF account. Plus, I believe after that 7 million is paid off,
Then all
It'll
of,
be
all
all
of
of it.
75%.
And that TIF account is could be
75%
used
of all of it.
for infrastructure things up there that
Yep.
we see needed,
Yeah, so as Jim
which
said,
which
once
could
the-
go towards
yeah,
capital.
Right.
Or
Capital.
you could sweep it all.
Right,
to
or the
general
council
fund.
can sweep
Oh,
anything.
oh, we could.
Yes.
Yeah, once it hits, if I could.
No, please.
Once it hits the 7 million, so once the developers pay back the 7 million, the money's still gonna go 75-25
Right.
into this account.
Right.
You folks could sweep that all of that money into the general fund
So
after
the
your
seven-
obligation is paid through the CEA.
Okay. And you said what, you could explain it, because I guess I don't understand this, the non,
So the,
um,
the,
par-
the
what-
TIF district is more than just the parcels that are subject to the CEA. So the
Okay.
CEA, Stonebridge is in CEA, the Credit Enhancement Agreement.
Yep.
So there's other parcels in the north end that were part of the TIF district. Those parcels are also going, there's 75% of that value is going into a special town.
but there's been no investment by those
No.
parcels.
Right. So those are mostly, they're just open land and, but you'll
But it's
see.
available for those to use if it makes sense.
Correct. So if, let's say the 58 acres, they could apply for a CEA, and then there could be, if there's infrastructure
Could be.
improvements that are required there, they could request the town to enter into a CEA with them for development.
But once developers paid off though, then that 75% will all go to the town TIF,
To the town, right?
which they
But
can
we don't have, we
choose to
don't,
either sweep or leave in a TIF for whatever purpose.
we don't have to use that for any other improvements. We can eventually sweep it back into the general
Correct.
fund.
Yep.
On
Unless
an,
there's a
on an
C-
annual, on an annual basis, I believe you could make that election.
Okay.
So there is an account, right now, there's an account where this money is going, so it's, it's, I'm not sure how much is in it now, but there's a couple $100,000,
More than that.
more than that, already accumulated in there from the.
Because there hasn't been that much tax from there yet, because
A
there's
lot
not
of the
much-
Solderman Way houses.
Oh,
So a
those,
lot of,
that's true.
Yep.
Those are all, yep.
so all the properties over there, so there's tax revenue there. But the CEA, the personal property and car revenues are not subject to the CEA, just real.
Just the real property.
Okay, so the Soldering Way, those condos, their property tax go like normal. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
those go to the TIF.
Oh, it's go to the tip.
Yeah.
Oh, so
The
what did you
whole
just say?
110 acres is subject to the CEA.
Right.
So the whole
Okay.
Stonebridge development, which is the Soderman Way,
Right.
carriage homes, as well as the commercial development,
So all their property tax go towards the tip too.
75% of it,
And for how long?
until you hit $7 million.
Which is a couple of years. So,
Right.
so a couple of years, and we could take the money from the TIF and roll it into our general fund as
Right,
well.
so you'll see an accounting. So let's say the developer's paid off. You're going to see what that value is in that account every year, and you can make the
Do
decision.
we have
to
an
see
idea
that.
of what that may be in a couple of years?
5.5.
Yeah.
5.5. That's that's the 5.5.
But it'll still be going into that account, 2575, but 100% of that is eligible for the council to use as it sees fit.
As long as we haven't entered into a new.
CEA, correct.
The 5 to 5.5 though I think includes cars and personal property. The estimate, so it's not all going.
Oh, okay.
Sean, are you able to show us now, or is it something going to show us later as far as if we did front load the 5 years, what that looks like in the out years?
Yeah, so I mean, we would need. I can't with that chart, and I know Jim was still working on that
Okay.
kind of traditional graph that we have, just to kind of build it up and maybe simplify it because it still is including like what we did in the 23 premium, what we did in the 24 premium. I don't think it's necessary to have that anymore.
Yeah.
That was a plan over the next 20 years, but you can at any point sort of change that plan. Plus, but we would assume we're keeping the same plan. We just don't need to show each component of it, so we'd like to roll them up so it's just a little easier to see what's happening for the future. yesterday. Service years. Yeah. So.
Alright, so we wanna go through the projects then?
Yeah, probably a good place to start. And again, I there may be some projects on here where I won't have all the answers for exactly the status, but I think it's a good snapshot and questions I can follow up with departments as needed. If you have questions about ours, and then we can, and similarly, I would say even more so with the Board of Ed, in terms of the status of any of these. You'll see a lot of open and active projects on the Board of Ed side especially, and I just don't personally have all the status updated. Some of them may well be in a position where they could be closed. So let's start with CIP. If you want to just pass, that's too many. I'll turn this way. Pass those down that way, and these are on the table.
Take one down and pass it.
And Jim, let me get you a copy too. Just okay. Thank you. So again, similar report to what I distributed as requested last year, broken out by our general budget areas. The number in the far left is the fiscal year that the project was approved, or in some cases first approved. You will see we have some standing accounts like, well, we haven't always been consistent, but for a while we had land acquisition. You'll see under planning and development, not to skip ahead, but it says 05. That's because that's the first year that they had a specific appropriation for land acquisition that was then added to over the years. You see it got all the way up to cumulative $19.5 million. We don't always do that, and you'll see that that's not the entire balance of our land acquisition account. We have two other appropriations there in 2020 and in 2024. We also have funds that we're still waiting on from the state as to reimburse that account for the Fenton Road property. So some of these you have to take in combination. But if we start up at the top, you have the original appropriation, which in almost every case should match the revised budget. Then you have how much was expended in the last fiscal year. Oh no, not in the last fiscal year. I think that's an entire. Oh no, I think that's right. That's over year to date. That's how much has been spent in any prior years up to
Yeah, it
that
should
point.
say
It
project.
shouldn't say
to date.
YTD. Yeah, it's just project to date. It's just the way Munis prints it.
Yeah.
And then that leaves you the available budget. Any encumbrances, so that'd be projects in the works where bills are being actively paid or encumbered as part of an ongoing project, or residual if the project's closed, but there still is just an closed out encumbrance. You'll see the available budgets there. So many of these projects, if we start with admin, finance, and the public property, most of these are all public property. A number of these are finished or close to being finished, certainly in the 2020 years and 2021, 2022. So you see some available budgets. Doesn't necessarily mean all these are bonded. I would turn that to Jim if they were. If they have been, that's what I was mentioning earlier. Could potentially be as Jim goes through his process of actually closing these out, it does generate available bond authorization money, which he can shift over
To projects that I
for
haven't
area.
bonded that I anticipate will need bonding in the near future.
Right. And that's a process the finance director does himself. He doesn't need, that's just shifting. As long as you've given, that's true, because as long as he's been given bond authority by you guys approving the project with bond language, bond proceeds, within reason can be moved over to fund, to finance them. That's ultimately, Jim's job to do. So, you'll see that most of the projects in 24-25 are either new, or some of those smaller numbers, just remember those are planning, in some cases those are planning funds that we approved. Not all of them are actually under design or underway all simultaneously. So, as we do start to have an eye towards reducing the number of future capital projects, there's no shortage, as you'll see on this list, of active projects that we're still working on. Now, sometimes you wouldn't want to design a project that you might then decide you're not going to do anymore. So that's one reason you might see some of these not spent. So,
what are the ones that are sort of the targets, the right targets for closing out?
I think in this section, I'd have to confirm again where, let me see if I have a separate list on this, but, the lower level improvements at the police station is a project that is complete. So that one should likely be ready to be closed out. The tech school and,
So that one's an example, sorry to interrupt you.
oh no, you're fine.
That one's an example where the available budget says 92,000, so that's an example where that money can be shifted over to another
To
project.
another project,
Yeah.
yeah, assuming it's ready to be cleared out, yep.
Okay.
And I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it probably is. Some of them, even like the roof replacement at Firehouse, and you'll see how it's cut off there because Munis only shows so much. It's usually a combo. It's Firehouse and Town Hall, I think, is that one. Some of those projects are, you have to kind of go back and piece together the appropriations. It's an active project. Doesn't mean it hasn't been used. It means it's there to fund, the second phase or the Firehouse portion of that phase of that project.
This one, the 2018 parking area linear trail, it's got
Yeah.
it's got 289,000.
Yeah, we've held on to that one for a little while. That
Is
one's
that for the railroad?
an interesting one. Yeah,
Railroad Avenue?
it was approved the year before. So it was approved in fiscal 18. It was the year before I started here. It was a capital project that was intended to try to find additional expanded parking on West Main Street. When the town then went to purchase the Railroad Avenue house, we ended up using the land acquisition funds to make the purchase. So
Okay.
we still have that. We haven't closed it out because really it probably is more appropriate to come out of that account and it would bolster our land acquisition account. We didn't want to lose those funds if we needed them. But if we don't want to, or if we're looking for funds that we want to just close out and it's now been, a number of years, that's one that we probably just need to reset and decide what to do with after. But it is there and there's available balance that should there be a reason to add additional parking in, adjacent to the linear trail, it is for that purpose. It is funding that is available dating back to 2018.
And is Willow Street, West Main Willow Street, is that pretty much done? Where, was that the sidewalk along?
Yeah,
all
that was
sides?
the steep grant, 2023.
Maybe that's what that S is, or, I don't know.
No, that was probably street, but it's,
Street,
yeah,
yeah,
streetscape,
Willow
Willow, that one's.
I don't know what is this?
Oh, do you have it here?
It says there's $74,000 available.
Yeah, that could be closed.
That's closed
That
out.
probably just closed.
And that was steep grant funded, so that's not money we can move. Again, this leave it to Jim, but I don't think it's not town dollars that we can move. It's just a project approval amount.
Okay.
Right, 'cause the steep
There's a
grant's-
little bit in
Yeah.
there because the town's match was reduced because the project came in under budget. But
That's right.
It's like $15,000.
Okay. So we have some small portion.
So does that mean like because it's a steep fund, we can't take it and use it for another project?
Right, so this is where it gets, right, these are available budget, remember, there's a difference between budget and financing, right? So budget is the project amount that can be spent. The source of funds with many projects can vary, even within a project. It can be grants, it can be cash, like CNR, and it can be bonds. It's often bonds. But in the case where it's state grants or some grant funding, then that obviously can't be something we then take and say, oh, we'll spend it on something else. It just,
Or close it out.
it ends up getting closed out, but there's no dollars that ever kind of came in here.
That's state money.
There's not many of those. It's
Yeah.
mostly
Very
the
rare.
steep.
Yeah. Correct.
And the one that was approved last year for the pool, that's,
Which one? Community pool aquatic enhancements?
Yeah.
That is the splash pad.
yeah. so
That's another steep grant funded, so 500,000, I believe, of that is steep grant.
Yep.
And that's still under design.
Okay.
So it's-
What about it's only a few dollars, but the leftover money from the North Brookfield acquisition, Sean, are we doing anything with that?
No, that's available. It was kind of just held in case there was some residual work that we needed to do to get it ready for sale or anything like that. It's there if we need it.
Which one, John? I'm sorry.
422.
It's a small one.
Yeah, in 2024 we approved 422 North Brooksvale next to Norton.
Okay,
It
got it.
just still has $20,000.
And we're able to sell that land that we don't need anymore if we wanna have income from that right away, right? There any reason we're waiting?
No reason. No.
Waiting for the school to be done, so we don't have a neighbor or anything, or what? I mean, unless
Yeah,
we have use for that land, I mean, we left enough so that it's still a buildable lot, right?
It is, yes, that's exactly right. It's a minimum buildable lot there. And we did the curb cut apron as we had that done as part of the residuals so that it's ready for the driveway. So no, just a matter of green lighting the sale.
Was there any interest in historical society people in that, or not?
Yeah, a couple, but I don't know if they're interested in keeping the house there, like buying it for the house and keeping it there, or taking it down and moving it. That haven't gotten that far yet.
What were the, I should remember this, the Veterans Memorial upgrades that we budgeted 200,000, we haven't spent anything yet?
Yeah, so that, Andrew could probably take that one. That's one of the
So that's
state funded
that's
ARPA
state
money.
funding. So that's no town funding, that's all
What was it for,
$200,000.
Andrew?
It was for the memorial out front here.
Oh, right over here?
Yes. So it was
So are you planning to do something there, or is anything
the
going on?
group across the hall, the veterans.
They're planning to do something there?
Yeah. So we actually went back to the state, asked if we could extend that funding out. They gave us another 2 years to expend it. So once their plan, if it's gonna be here or if it's gonna be Bartlum.
Can they
once-
use that money towards Bartlett if they wanted to?
We'd have to ask the state if they'll change it, because the way that the proposal was written, it was all for town center. So,
Were they gonna replace statues and things with it?
so they were going to, we did a call for veterans for new names or for names to be added to the existing memorial out here. So it was to recast all the bronze plaques, to do some upgrades to the existing memorial, to bring it back to the original design, because there have been some issues with the original intent of
The artist who did it.
the artist. So he had come up with a plan that he would be happy with allowing for some minimal work to be done to the existing memorial.
If we don't, is there a point where we don't use that money and we lose it or anything, or are we okay with time frame on that?
We have the 2 years, and they were a little bit reluctant to give that extension, so I would say we should use it the next 2 years.
We should just keep a fire on that one, so whatever you do, whatever the people decide to do, let's not
Let's not lose it. Yeah.
forfeit the funds.
Absolutely.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to make decisions, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the 2023 paving of North parking lot in Cheshire Park, I assume it is that?
Next page.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
That's done, right? The North parking lot was paved,
That's correct. That one should be.
so that's 134 grand now still.
Where are you looking, Jim?
It's in
Quarterly
2023,
down.
it's about a quarter of the way down. It says paving
Okay,
North
yep.
parking lot, Cheshire.
Yeah, again, some of these, as I said before, I just want to confirm the original scope. Sometimes it included a little bit of, either additional work to do. I know we have south parking lot also on the horizon, but it, by all intents, yes. If it's strictly the north parking lot, then that project is done, and it should be available to be closed out and put over to another account.
So on something like that, why is there so much appropriated for it, but it only came out to be less than half of what was appropriated?
Yeah, again, with each project, I don't have them all committed to memory per se, but sometimes, it's just a matter of, we don't want to have to come back for more money. We want to make sure it's as reasonable an estimate as you can, and if we can get it done cheaper, we have really competitive bidding. It's not uncommon to have bids come in $50,000, $75,000 under what you anticipate sometimes, and sometimes the opposite happens, as we've experienced.
Wasn't there also some projects that Public Works actually just does themselves?
Yeah, so I will say that one, I believe the paving of the north parking lot also included the drainage that went both north and south right along the tree line that Public Works did self-perform in that case. Because they had to do the drainage improvements in order for the parking lot to, function and be better lasting. And that was self-performed by Public Works. And I think, because I think I sent an email around about this maybe a couple years ago, sort of giving them credit for how much they were saving us. And I think that money you're seeing right there might just be the result of that savings.
This is the north parking lot where, Sean?
Cheshire Park.
Fish Park?
At Cheshire Park.
North entrance by the basketball court, all that. So Jim's point is that the paving piece is all done. I
Yeah.
believe the scope included the drainage improvements needed to support that at Cheshire Park. And again, don't quote me, but I believe that savings is a result of
That's
the
awesome.
work cell last year.
That's a big savings.
And the restroom upgrades at Quinnipiac, I know we did those, but I mean, originally we were gonna replace them and found out the cost was too much, so they upgraded. Are we keeping those as a placeholder in case we have to, in case we get more to do it, or?
Yeah, that was in 2018, 2019, which are the years we were discussing those before the budgets of 19 and 20. There were a series of restroom upgrades, and they were sort of piggybacking a lot of the times. As you kind of start to see there, it says Quinnipiac right there in 2019, upgrades Quinnipiac Lock 12. And then I think the original intent with the 2020 money was to build a second bathroom facility closer to the south part of Quinnipiac Park. But then it was deemed not nearly enough money, and the quotes we were getting, I want to say, were $400,000 or $500,000, and it wasn't going to be enough to get it done without scaling it back to just a very little facility, sort of not usable. So I believe that project, I want to confirm that again with Dan, but those are likely projects that are ripe for either being closed out or the scope changing all to something else.
So, I had a couple other specific questions, Sean, but
Sure.
what are we trying to accomplish here? Because we're just kind of randomly looking at stuff. So
Yeah, it's not.
Is there
It's a
goal
good
here? Is there
point.
an
No, I
objective?
think some of it honestly is to look through and well, it's really twofold. One is to give you some assurance there are either ongoing projects that we still need to get through all of these, and rather than add on another 10 or 15 or 20 more projects, I think the town has enough to continue to do without, for the next year, maybe year or two. Again, road paving and other things, those are decisions about how much you want to get paid. Those are largely contracted out projects. But some of these other are in terms of annual projects. These items, I think the goal here is to get a sense for the things we already have, confirm you still want to do some of them. If there were any second thoughts on any, that would be one thing. But the other piece is we have these projects to get through. If we had a very light, as I proposed, a number of capital project, either cancellations or move-outs in what I proposed to you guys, we have enough here to get us through another year or two of just active projects without needing to add a lot more.
And if we abandon the remaining funds for projects that might be available to us,
It could be, right.
we're not looking, we don't have a goal objective for that. That's just a random thing. If we find one, that's great, but we're not trying to come up with
Yeah.
$500,000 or anything like that. It's not, there's no number that we're.
There's no magic number we're trying to get, but it's great. This has already been pretty helpful. I think if there's some of these that we've identified that are ready to be closed out, Jim just needs to close them out.
There's a lot of active projects, if I
Right.
could just chime in for a second. And, a lot of them have 10, 20, $30,000 balances.
That all
Some of
adds
these
up.
projects
Yeah.
they do. Some of these go back 5, 10 years. A lot of them are Board of Ed.
And
I
they're, the Board of
really
Ed's in here
want to get
too.
together
Yes.
with them because there are several
And
that.
we cleaned theirs out a little bit last year too, didn't we?
A little bit, but there's a lot more.
Can I just ask you, the $500,000 left on Bartlam, the Chapman property, is that gonna be put, I see you have 650 encumbrance, I'm assuming that's the band shelter. The $500,000 left over, what is that gonna be used, do you think, or?
Yeah, I think almost all of it, yes.
will
So
be.
some of these are, right, there's still retainage and things the contractors owed. The band shell's not built, it's not individually
Right.
singled out. The contractor has contracted for the entire project, but there were a number of change orders. In fact, we have, it looks like, another likely change order to try to get the foundation of the band shell finalized so they can start construction. We've held some of the money, and we have a separate budgeting for. I maintain a budgeting file for that particular project, because there's been a lot of moving parts, a lot of state grants and ARPA money that we've kind of added into that. But, yeah, I mean, our intention, of course, is to still come in under budget. I hope significantly under budget, but there's always curveballs as you try to get finalized. This band shell's be a little bit of a curveball. And
So we're not gonna find $500,000 there.
no, you're not gonna
You're
find
saying, you're saying that, just out of curiosity, I mean, it seemed like the project was well managed and well run.
Yeah.
What kind of extras are they hitting? I mean, they had proposed a band shell. It was part of their proposal, as did the other consultants who were designing it. Should have been, what are we paying extras for now?
Yeah, so we're very much trying not to. That's, I think, that's an issue that has come up very recently, and honestly, it's a longer story to get back to. But it has
I
to
know
do
it's
with what
complicated, I know.
what the design team had recommended, and I think their position that the contractor needed to get some additional design done as part of the foundation work for it, if I'm understanding. And Andrew, I know you were at the last meeting, so jump in if I get any of this wrong. We're trying to take the position that we are taking the position. The town, it's between the design, I think, the designer and the contractor as to who exactly, had it correct in the scope. And that's not, again, some of the other, we approved a number of change orders, including the town green area that wasn't originally part of the concrete sidewalks, a lot of those things. So the 500,000 is not a budget number. Remember, there's money that we have to have as retainage and hold back. It's not we're not under budget by that amount.
If anything's left over there, can it go towards the Veterans Memorial at the end, or is that not available?
I think it probably could, yeah. And right now, my budget, I believe, with everything we've obligated, so that not what we've paid. That number is how much we've paid, remaining that hasn't been paid. But we're closer to about $200,000 under budget, so we're not half a million.
No, it's been a great story in terms of
Yeah.
the completeness of the project and the quality of it and the budget and everything, so I'm not complaining about it, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So as far as like road improvement, your ask this year is the 400,000. Obviously, that takes into account the 600,000. It's already
Just
Yeah, it
there,
does.
right?
I wish, yeah. Unfortunately, we combined some of these projects to have one budget question, so it hinges on how much is available following the East Johnson Avenue Road reconstruction project, which is starting in the coming weeks.
Okay.
So Merrick and I met last week. I mean, he'd love to see that $400,000. If we wanted to have the same level of road paving that we were going to do this year, we would need to add another probably $400,000 or $500,000 to that request that he had, or that I recommended of $400,000. Some of that will depend on how much is residual from these other projects, but it's I might have been a little aggressive in cutting that back. That being said, I knew it was a year that we were going to be considering as minimal as possible.
But we have
capital
this
investments.
600,000, 628,000 from 2024.
We do, yep, but that's East Johnson.
That's part of East Johnson as well?
That one is, yeah.
So the 2025 East Johnson is.
Yeah, if you combine them together, yeah, I have I could give you a separate worksheet that shows the amount, the East Johnson contract, I believe it's like 1.4 million or something like that.
And
Then when you take out, we're always a year behind, so we have enough to do the paving season they're doing this spring and this fall, we pay for out of the existing funds. And what we're talking about then is the paving that will be next spring and really next fall after.
Which would be East Johnson.
Well, East Johnson's now,
Okay.
this year, yeah. But when taken together, the 600 plus the residual gets you enough to do this year's, plus whatever's left over, and the 400 gets you, I think it's around 900,000 for the following year. We usually do about 1.5 million, so.
Right, okay.
And I can break all that. When we get into capital, we'll have all of that, so you can make an informed decision about what we're actually approving,
Okay.
which we're obviously not doing tonight, but.
Can any of these projects that have not been started be appropriated this year? Like
Oh, they're all
Shaw?
approved this year. Yeah, I mean, you could, in terms of if you wanted to cancel the effort and do something
Either
different.
cancel or push it off another year?
You can. I think what you'd probably want to do though is just not add any additional capital projects to it and keep these. Unless you really didn't want to do the project, you've already gotten the approvals.
These are already
In
in
some
the-
cases, some are approved by voters and other things that it would just be a little more cumbersome unless you truly, so something like sidewalk maintenance or sidewalk extension, those we're going to have needs for, so you might as well keep them and then just maybe not add so aggressively additional appropriations.
Well, the projects that haven't used a penny yet, I mean, it's probably worth to look at those and see, is there a reason they haven't gone forward? Are they really not that important, and do we wanna just?
Some of them are, right, some of them they just, again, the project may have started, they just haven't spent money yet, in some cases, there's prep and there's design, or there's contracting. I mean, I think if you saw a couple pages before, the acquisition of 2 fire trucks is in there at $2.5 million. Those were ordered, 18 months ago, or whatever it is at this point. And
I thought we
we
had
just
to put
haven't
something
purchased them.
down on those when we
You
ordered
gotta
them.
pay for them, totally,
Total.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we haven't even.
in this case,
they
that
haven't
didn't,
ordered those
no,
yet?
because that's what's been spent, that's the,
But I mean.
Oh, they're ordered, we're just,
Oh, we
oh, they
sent-
were ordered the
Yeah.
day after they were.
they're ordered and paid for, but we
Oh.
won't see them for 2
What's
years.
in this?
I don't know that they're paid, I don't know that they're fully paid for in any way, I think they were.
I didn't think
the purchase
they-
order was.
There's 2.5
Okay.
million still
Yeah.
on there.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
alright, I was looking at it differently
And
then.
looking at the Board of Ed, I mean, there's like 9 projects that date back from 2016 and earlier that, I mean, it seems like that we keep adding money to the science lab improvement, but they haven't touched them yet. And I'm like, how many more years are we gonna keep doing that? And I mean, when I took a tour of the high school and I opened the cabinet and pulled out a set of brand new beakers and saw the date was 1992 on the price tag, I'm like, wow, no wonder they don't have storage. They're not even using the beakers from 92.
It is a 2014 project, and it went from 300 to $500,000 and nothing's been spent.
Nothing's been used on it.
It's kind of, it is suspect when you look at it. It's probably worth at least talking about.
And what's the 06 one, the 710,000, that, you got 197,000 left from that? Is that
Which
for
one?
Humiston? Something?
Yeah, we're all over the place, and
Well, that's
I
true.
don't know that
Right.
anybody's
The
following.
top of the Board of Ed page
The
there.
first two.
Okay.
Yeah.
06 plan / DSN Humiston.
I mean,
Okay.
you have over $1 million in stuff there that,
Yeah, so these I would certainly defer to Vin and Jeff to explain in greater detail. Obviously, those also both very much predate my time here. However, that question's been raised by multiple councils in the past, and so I recall the answer for those involved code compliance needs for Humiston, and some project work that's probably insufficient to complete the work, but they wanted to have the appropriation available as they were under I don't know if it was an obligation or there was a, I think it was an ADA accessibility concern that there's extensive work, as we all know, with Humiston, that you need to really bring it all the way up to code. So I think some of that money is there to do that, but then I think there's also always been talk of no longer using Humiston at some point, and so they.
well, also the underground oil tank, and I thought they finished the utility tunnel. I thought I saw pictures of that, they completed that.
Well, yeah, so we could go through these I mean, if everyone wanted to, but you're saying, Sean, there's no value in going through these one by one.
I think
just-
there's certainly
you just wanted
value.
us
Especially Board of Ed.
Well, I would say, yeah. I mean, there's certainly no value in if it's details about each project that you're looking for. I just don't know that I can offer them. What I will say though, and this is true on both sides of the street, I would certainly say it's true, maybe in a little bit larger dollar amount on the Board of Ed. There's a lot of projects that are just not started yet, and so and some of those you'll see in our case. Some of ours go back. You'll see 25, of course. You'll see 2024, and even 23, where maybe a project's still getting off the ground. There are a number of them here in 2020, 2022, 2023 that I think, as this recommended project added another 20 or so in requests, or 15 or 20 in requests for the next year, I didn't approve very many of them at all on the Board of Ed side. So I did that in part because I had run this report and said, I just feel like if this is an austere, difficult budget year, there's more than enough already on the books. Yes, one effort could be to go through and have Vin and others chime in as to which of these maybe could be closed out and just canceled, with the benefit of years gone by that maybe priorities have changed. But at a minimum, if you just back out the Board of Ed number, if you take out the 2 new schools
Yeah, let's not have to.
number,
Cancel that.
But if you don't include that see that $148 million on the top of page 2? If you back that out of the 156 million you see on the bottom of the Board of Ed section, that's $9 million of project approvals, not including the 2 elementary schools that are currently available to be spent. So that's just a lot. I think I personally would feel like before we go adding another round of 8 to 10 to 12 more projects this year, let's get that $9 million down to $4 million.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you. So if we find like 3 or 4 million in here and take it off for everything, then some of the capital projects that we are looking at for this year that may add up to that, it's just kind of a wash then, right? Sort of.
I think you could argue that.
Yeah, definitely. I would argue that.
Sure.
Do we
Okay,
have
so what do you-
jurisdiction over Board of Ed capital projects, or do they have
Yes.
jurisdiction over that?
We could take the money away from them.
So we just,
Yeah, with
Yeah.
capital projects.
Yeah.
And that will lower the town's bond debt too.
Yeah.
This is showing as
So then,
committed money.
so then we do wanna go through this or we don't, because I'm confused as to whether or not we wanna get our heads into this. I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you said you can't answer all the questions, but at least.
Well,
it seems like-
I
here's,
think as
Go
far
ahead.
as, as far as for our planning, like we talked about, maybe us not doing much more this year, right? I mean, if you look at the Board of Ed for 2024, they have 12 projects there, and only 2 of them are more than 50% spent. Only, and one of those is 58%. So we could take the same approach and say, this year we're not really going to add anything for you guys.
I understand, and I'm fine with that, Jim. I understand that approach, and that's fine if we don't want to, but I guess if we want to do more than that, if we want to just say, okay, we see this, we know we've got a lot of work that's on the books, plenty of things to get done. Let's only approve new capital projects that are absolutely critical now, if any, and then let people catch up. But then are we gonna still want to, I hear another train of thought that we want to take some of these out of here so we can apply them to new capital projects, or is that not
Well, I think
something we want to do?
I think what we want to know before we adopt the operating budget is, of course, anything that's going to impact the operating budget. So I think, and maybe maybe our time is better spent is another sheet I have, which is on CNR. It's just a 1-pager as opposed to this. The CNR are cash-funded projects. So that's also an area where on our assumptions for the budget, we're deciding between appropriating, like we talked about last meeting, instead of the 1 million that I recommended, maybe we only do, I think we said 500,000, maybe less. The more projects you find there that we are done with, and can be closed out, or that we want to, cancel, that's generating available cash funding that you could
You have another list
certainly
like this here,
reapply.
Sean?
I recall having this conversation last year and I thought a lot of this stuff was gonna come off, and it doesn't seem to have come off at all,
Did some come off, Jim, or?
I don't know, I was just curious, how much came off last year?
I did something, I think, in the early fall
Yeah.
with excess bond proceeds and so forth. But I can tell you, there's absolutely anywhere from 50 to 100 projects that have residual balances. And I have a list, I've started a list. There's a lot of stuff I want to confirm with department heads, because some of this stuff goes back quite a ways. But I wouldn't be surprised if I have $1 million of residual balances that I can apply to other projects.
so,
That's gonna reduce my bond authorization, which means it's gonna reduce the amount that I had projected in those out years.
Right. So and that's kind of what I wanted to do with this stuff, John. So, and help me then to understand, Jim.
Yeah.
For example, the third line down, and somebody mentioned it earlier, from 2012 CHS utility tunnels, there's 22,852 in there. Nothing's been touched for, well, we know for a year because there's no encumbrances.
Right.
If we were to close that out,
Yep.
what happens with that 23 grand?
Again, I would reduce a borrowing authorization on perhaps a project that maybe I hadn't borrowed yet, or I will apply it to some
So
future
we
project.
we could take it to, okay, so we could move it to pay for projects that we're looking at this year.
Absolutely.
Well,
Okay,
and perhaps
so
we-
and that's kind of why I said we really need to look at capital, because projects, it's been there since 2012.
Yeah.
That's 13 years ago.
We also have $374,000 for the Norton School cafeteria.
Yeah.
Don't think we need that
There's,
anymore.
there's those types of things.
Yeah.
There's,
I didn't
you
notice
meant,
that
somebody mentioned the science labs.
Yeah.
Yep.
2014. I bonded that in 2015 and again, and I think, I just looked, it was like 2023 in two pieces, 300 and 200. That's because Vin told me at that point in time, 2 years ago, that they were gonna move forward with that, but they haven't spent a penny on it, so I'm miffed. And that originally, was appropriated into that.
I know, they're afraid that to have anything taken away from them because
Yeah.
they want to keep everything in there, but I mean.
there's
I will
quite a
say
few
with
like
the
that.
Norton cafeteria, I will say, everybody,
That's
I just don't
no-brainer.
wanna, I don't wanna give the
Yeah.
impression though, that one is very much not being done, there was a
Yeah.
decision not to do it.
That's good to
Just
know.
cause it's on the active list, just means Jim hasn't closed it out.
But these are things that we should have all closed out.
Yeah.
A lot of these
Jim,
things.
you don't need our authorization to close things out. You can close them out whenever you feel like it.
There's a bond
If there's-
authorization that legitimately was never bonded and we don't need it, then I have to come to you to
Yeah.
deauthorize the bond authorization.
Peter and Jim, I mean, do we want to schedule a workshop, a separate workshop with Vin and maybe Dan Bombero and Sean and just run through them quickly one by one and try and, or is that not, I mean, I know that you're saying this is for big picture, but do we need to do that as well? And
Yes, and I think the time we have before we have to, it doesn't have to happen in this next few
month.
weeks.
We have
Yeah,
to
so
go
budget
out.
first.
And remember, with capital, we have until late, until August, really, if you want to
Okay.
make any. So I would probably say our time is best spent on some of the other
Okay.
operating budget items. But I again very much do appreciate and want to have these conversations and
Yeah.
we've talked about them because it does tie in a little bit to our longer term debt. It will definitely tie in to how much capital, if at all, we do add. And if we could dollar for dollar close out projects and everything is funded with anything new we've added, I think that's a great message to the public in a difficult budget year. We're not borrowing any additional money to pay for these things that we've, maybe these select few capital items we've agreed to do, because there will be some.
But we're not gonna know that until we go through all this.
Right, how much we
back
generate.
end.
But we can, as staff, we can make recommendations on them. I have a whole list of these. I have one of these that I've marked up where I have some that are
Okay.
ready to go.
Okay.
But he maintains those all the time.
Is it ideally if we could not add anything this year in terms of new,
New debt
New
would be
debt,
great.
right.
Yeah, I think that's the
That's the
goal.
goal,
I think
yeah.
that would be the goal. I think we all share that goal.
okay.
Then that's a good mission, though. It's good to hear it and kind of say it, but I agree with it. I think that's.
But does that actually close that $15 million gap, and does it have an impact on the mill rate?
Yeah. So no.
Well,
Not really, except, well, yeah.
Yeah.
It can in that, and it probably more with some of the CNR cash funded projects that you could reduce how much CNR we put forward this year, theoretically.
And it may give you more comfort on how much of that premium you want to use sooner than later.
Right, so the
Advance
premium's
some
the other
stuff.
way it ties in, for sure.
because you talked the other night, John, about knocking down CNR to $500,000. But if we can go through these,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much is there, but it's going to do one of two things. Either we can lower that $500,000, which is going to affect the operating budget because that'll not a lot, but it closes that $15 million gap. But it also tells us this is the amount of capital projects that we can do this year because we can pay for them and get to Jim's point of having zero capital expenditures for this year.
I think it's, and we should always be doing the right thing regardless if it has a direct, but this one could have a direct impact on us in a positive way, so it's all good, I think.
It's all good.
All right, so for tonight then, what's it sounds like, and I agree with you, that we probably should have Vinny and Dan Bombero and the council and you guys, obviously, and go through these one by one and just yes, no, up, down, let's sweep them, don't sweep them, cancel them, don't cancel them, and
Just the reality of the situation.
I mean, if they're not planning on doing some of these projects for another couple of years, remove them and come back and request them another year.
Yeah.
I agree.
yeah.
But we'll do that after we work through some other things, but we know that this is here, we have a comfort level, we have some room here to work with, which is what I think we're trying to get across tonight, Sean.
Yep, definitely.
I mean, as a starting point, I think anything that's 2020 and older that's 0% expended so far is probably.
Yeah.
Those are
That's an
very-
easy one, right?
Yeah.
Those are low hanging fruit.
Well,
Yeah, the
And I don't know
2021
whether
was-
maybe some
Yeah, maybe
of
even
those
2021.
projects, maybe, you know, when they did the performance contract, energy efficiency, maybe some of those got financed through that, and maybe they, you know, maybe they don't need some of these, as you said, so.
Yeah, right off the bat, isn't there 375 then, or 374,082 for the Norton cafeteria renovation?
Right,
That,
right.
that we can dump into CNR right now? Because that's not gonna be done.
Not in CNR.
Well,
Yeah,
if
definitely
if
it's
it's a bonded project, then we can use those bond proceeds if I bonded it, or just
So you
deauthorize the
probably,
bond
yeah, you
authorization.
probably only bonded the planning money that's been spent.
So that's,
Okay.
yeah, so it's just the planning
Okay.
money, yeah.
But it closes it out,
Yeah, gets it off the list.
yeah.
There's a lot of CNR stuff that's kind of maintenance-y, that was almost like, you know, pockets of reserves for maintenance for this,
Yeah.
that, and the other thing, and, yeah, I don't know, maybe you could take a look at some of that, and,
And there's also a bunch of projects that probably are completed, where you say it's, 77%, 80% used, that you can wipe out too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So,
Yeah, that's that 10, 15, 20 you're saying, but that'll add up to
Yeah.
10 projects, you'll add up to a couple $100,000, and it's real money. This is great.
there's a lot I can clean up, hopefully in a short period of time, and share that with you, just so you can see
That's why they have
All
a
these
delete button on the
residual-
computer.
all these residual balances, and, you know, hopefully that'll be enlightening, and clean up a lot of.
If I could say the obvious too, is that there's so much investment going on into the town's infrastructure, as you see here. If there was a time, there's plenty of projects that the community's gonna
Yeah.
see that there's an investment going on in town. It's not like all of a sudden we're not investing. There's schools under construction, Bartlam's gonna open, there's a splash pad that's going on, there's improvements at Mixville Park, there's roads that are being paved. So it's not like all of a sudden,
Yeah, we don't want our staff hanging around saying, well, what do we do now? There's nothing to do.
I think there's plenty to keep
We
everyone.
are gonna get to that point, that's for sure.
So.
And the capacity is only so much, anyway, so clearly they're not getting to things, so.
Do you wanna look at CNR stuff then?
Yeah,
Sean?
we can hand those out. Maybe just go through those. There, put these 4 down here. Note that the 3 or 4.
That's through.
I started to. The title just accidentally pasted CIP. I crossed it off there for you. But suffice it to say, this is CNR,
Do you have one of these, Andrew?
the one
It's
pager.
only one page, Sean, this is impressive.
It's only one page because CNR, remember, is just cash for capital. It's a revolving fund of about $1 million each year, so it's about $5 million total in the fund.
What's the significance between the yellow and the blue?
No, I appreciate
I
it.
colored yellow and blue just so you could separate years. So
I see.
if it's 20, I grouped years together by sort of blue and yellow, just easier to kind of count back the years. I will say with CNR, they a lot of them, as you see, jump around there a little bit between the first two, like finance and then administration, I guess, are two different ones. But yeah, a couple of these, I know, Jim, the revaluation numbers, those are completed
Yeah, I was
projects.
gonna take 100 right off the
Right.
get-go off the 172 there, you see in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, so the amount we approved in 2022, remember we approved revaluation amounts in 2 tranches, one for the estimated cost of the actual reval and the other for possible expenditures, legal expenditures after with appeals.
So both of those are coming off? The top two?
No, we're
Oh,
still
no,
in the,
just the-
yeah,
Setting the
the
1.5.
second one, we're still very much in the appeal process
Yeah.
with that reval. That was the reval from October of 24.
But 100 out of the 172.
Two.
Yeah, and that'll probably even go higher eventually, but just if there's any residual, cost that we have out of there. Tech reserve fund from last year and from this year, the replacement equipment, those are earmarked. And in fact, I think some of these, I ran this about a month ago, so some of these might have been spent more recently, but I know there are server and security replacements for end-of-life camera systems that we have on the school side and the town side. Unfortunately, there's a lot of these cameras that if you've followed this over the last couple of years, that are streaming cameras that are now no longer supported because the manufacturer, sometimes it's manufacturers from China, I think, or others that could potentially have issues. So we can't replace like for like. We have to get new replacements. So some of that is in the 25 and the 24 Tech Reserve Fund, and that town and school security project. Those are all tied to door access controls and servers and the camera projects.
So the 250 on the next one down, Sean, we haven't used any of that, but that's all specifically,
As of today, they honestly might have made that purchase in the last couple of weeks and months. That's that same.
all the 250?
Most of it probably.
And
I
that's
think-
servers and things like that, you said?
It is, yeah, and other technology for,
Okay.
again, the
So do
door
you have
access
any,
and the cameras.
do you have any left over?
I
mean,
wouldn't with that's really been a revolving fund. Now we do have another request this year. I think I scaled it back a little bit, if I recall correctly, because I was in touch with Apex asking the same question: do we have all of this earmarked or not? So it might inform whether or not we, and I can get more information for when we're ready to talk capital, but whether or not we make another appropriation. This one we've usually done. We've probably done one every year for the last 7 years at least. They are very good about spending it and getting it turned around quickly. That's why you don't see a 23 or a 22.
No.
This fund, John, is treated pretty much like our roads, where we keep putting in money every year, and it's just a rotating fund of updating, retiring servers, retiring, old hardware and software, or hardware, not software, but hardware pieces that, they just keep updating.
And I'm 100% supportive. We don't want to, expose ourselves in.
No, we don't want to get back to where we were when
And the only
we
question
first
I have
started
is
this
there,
fund.
100 left over that would apply to stuff for this year? You'll have to
I'll confirm,
measure
yeah.
that against
Yeah.
what we're asking for this
Definitely.
year's. To
That's
make
ex-
sure we're asking for enough, but not too much, I guess.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that was
All right.
exactly the question that we asked during the process. So
Okay.
the next two items, and I think we have another one requested this year, have been very heavily used. The capital planning and building assessment accounts. Those are just allow us to do some of the planning for projects that pop up before the capital improvement process. Sorry, sometimes we ask for a project we know we want to do, we put that planning money in the first year, but many times we don't, or we have other, architect work or design work that we need to do to get a project ready to be presented. That's what those have been. That capital planning fund, those we use pretty heavily to pay for those things as they come up throughout the year. And then 24 is pretty much all of those are those light duty vehicles mostly we talked about with police and sometimes fire and a few public works.
How many police cars did we agree to, or did we?
I think it was 2.
Two?
For this year, we
Yeah.
haven't
We
we
haven't.
haven't
So
finalized
there's
it, but I
four-
think
are
we
there-
told
asked for four.
Neil
Are there
too.
4 in this amount then?
This is last year,
This is last
so
year,
it's whatever
okay.
we approved last year. I believe it was 4.
Oh,
Maybe
Yeah.
was it 3?
Thought it
It
was
might have
3
been
last
3.
year.
That was when we had the increase in
This
the,
is just police, this vehicle replacement? It's not?
No, it's heavily
No.
police, but no, it's the catch-all. So it's whatever we had in
Public
the
Works.
version of this last year.
The pickup truck.
I think there was one pickup truck. Sometimes there's a request for a.
It could be park and
Lawnmower or
rec
something?
too, it's,
No?
No, that would usually.
That would be equipment?
Yeah, if it was small enough. Yeah,
So
it would
there
be
is,
in-
so there is 200 that hasn't been expended yet, Sean, or is that not true?
Yeah, they may be on order, right? Sometimes with these vehicles, you're just waiting for them to arrive, and in some cases, we've only had these funds for about the last 5 or 6 months, so it's.
Yeah, because something the chief said, that I guess they ended up getting Durangos instead of
They did, yep.
Tahoes, and the police liked them. And then when I said, well, why don't we just get Durangos? They're $10,000 cheaper. Oh, well, they got taller officers. Well, they're not all tall. So I'm just wondering if when we go to them, say, hey, maybe you get half Durangos and half. If we could save $10,000 or $20,000 a year on these vehicles.
Right.
I mean, I know he started. All of a sudden, he started saying, well, they're not big enough to have all the equipment. But I mean, he did start off by saying they love them.
They do like them, yeah, they do. So absolutely, it's very fair, and they will, they'll work with whatever.
I mean, I'm not saying not to
we're
do any Tahoes, because I get, there's guys as tall as Jim there. I mean, they're not going to want to squeeze into a Durango.
Oh, like I said, the Durango's not, it's fine.
I don't even know.
It's not like it's that. It's not like it's like like a Honda Fit.
Right.
no, but I think to Neil's point is that you gotta remember they're putting a cage so you can only go back so
And they
far.
got the
You're putting in
laptops and the-
you're putting in the computer, which,
Takes up that center
Yeah,
console.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than that, again, looking at back, again, you see.
And we have
what
nothing
was-
left for open space on our budgets anywhere. If
The other
something-
one, no,
If
the other.
something came up, we're like at a loss to.
We have land acquisition.
Well, we do have land acquisition.
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah. this
Yeah, that
one-
was on this one. The
We had-
first,
We had a couple, 300,000, I think.
And we still have a few dollars in
Yeah.
there.
Two or
something
It's
$300,000.
about 200 plus. We're still due the Fen Road
yeah,
grant money, so it's like
we're still owed
300,000.
some reimbursement on that, so.
So 300,000. But yeah, I mean, not enough for maybe a major purchase. That's for sure.
Oh, this is land management, okay, so
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know what that account. That one dates back to 2015.
there's not much left in it.
No, I'm not sure. I'll have to confirm whether or not that still gets.
Okay.
That one might just get closed out. Various town building improvements. That one gets used pretty heavily. That's almost exhausted here. I think we are making a request for another one. And then the planning money for the replacement roof at the police station is that last one we just approved last year.
There's another ask for this year, right?
So that's the plan, right? This is the design.
This was the planning and
I
then
think
the
the next year is
payoff on
the.
it, yeah.
and I think
Is
we
the
did
actual
So there
buy.
need to be a design for a roof replacement at the police station? I mean, is that
I'd
that
have to check
complicated?
with. Yeah, I don't know.
Seems
I don't
like
know for sure.
Pick the shingles.
Okay, just curious.
I mean, I've learned that a lot of our government
Seems like
buildings have
25,000 might be
complicated
enough to
roofs,
do
but
that
yeah,
roof. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know for sure.
So this is showing 1.9 million is available budget, but most of this money is going to be expended.
I would say most of it, yeah.
For about $100,000.
You know, the thing is, we do have some of these either. Again, the revaluation ones, I think you'll see those come down, but the technology pieces we talked about are some big ones up top, but those
Yeah.
get spent. The rest are kind of non-specific. You'll see a lot of cases planning the study, right? The townwide transportation study that we're undergoing is there in the middle of the page.
What about that 185 for the Board of Ed building maintenance from '09?
So that one, if I defer to Vin to confirm, but I think that was, see how it says 500,000 is a revised budget?
Yeah.
I think that's one that, while it was opened in '09, they've added to it over the years with additional appropriations. So I don't know, I don't have the date of the most recent appropriation, so we just have to confirm
Okay.
that. But I want to say though, that has been 185 for at least the last couple of years that I've done this report.
Because I see in '18 they added 65
Yeah.
onto it.
I know, you do start to see some of these and think that they are more insurance policies than actual projects.
Yeah.
So that's a good question, I think, for the Board of Ed.
I guess what I'm getting at is
Yep.
with it being at 1.9, I know some of this is obviously gonna be spent, but do we have some flexibility in terms of what we need to add to it this year?
Right.
I know we're
Well,
talking about
yeah.
backfilling it maybe with
Yep.
some capital stuff, but
What's nice about this stuff, though, is this is all cash funded, so I will say, these
Right.
are not, there's no bond authorizations.
Right.
That every dollar you're able to
no,
not
I
spend.
know, but I'm
you
talking
use
about
cash. Yep.
the ability to actually reduce what we need, so
Right.
we reduce the,
Yep.
no,
Yep, absolutely.
or at least reduce the increase.
I mean, if we can find a few $100,000 in this.
Yeah, what's happening with the Weeks Pond rehab from 2010?
Yeah, that one,
That's been something that's been going on.
yeah, we actually have tapped into that more recently to do some of the work.
I know
with
there
it.
has been some discussion about that, and there's some concerns about getting that, either with some of the the sedimentation and other things happening there. So, obviously, hopefully, that's something. So I think there were some gentlemen who from Castle Glen who came and talked to us about that, and just making
Yeah,
sure
it's
that,
on a treatment program now with
right.
Alt Habitat, I think is the company.
Yeah, I actually I went through it last summer and it seemed to be a lot better than it was in the past, so.
There was a washout. I feel there was sometime there was a washout or something.
Yeah, from
there's
the
some-
East Mitchell project.
Oh,
there
right,
was
right.
Yeah.
Rain. I think the suspicion was it was coming. More the suspicion. I think the runoff from East Mitchell was coming down and then kind of had clouded up and silted that a portion of the sort of a little pond before the pond.
Right.
On the other side of the road. So yeah, it's been a challenge.
So Sean, we've got,
Yep.
it looks like we've been doing 150 a year for various improvements at parks and open space. They
Yes.
used the 22, the 23 is partially used,
Almost
24 is
used,
not
yeah.
used. Is that specifically work that's allocated, or it's just the budget?
We've tapped into those for a lot of these, supplemental work on. I mean, even the Mixville project, which I think actually was probably a bonded project, but when we've just had all of these field enhancements and trail improvements and non-specific, but things that come up throughout the year. Those do get used pretty heavily. We can certainly talk to John and Dan about, that 24 appropriation, what the immediate plans are for it. But it will set, kind of like I was just saying about insurance policy a little bit, is that it is good to have some of these funds available when things like a swing set breaks and you just got to get out there and fix it, and you don't have anything in the operating budget that just is a line item for entire swing sets or slides. We go out there and do it. I mean, is 150 the right number? Could it get scaled back a little bit? Certainly a conversation.
Are they asking for another 150 this year? I didn't notice. Yeah.
I'd want to confirm to be sure.
It seems like it's been, a budget item and it makes sense. I understand it makes sense.
Yeah, there are very visible improvements, but at a certain point too, like you said, we've done a lot. The various improvements to parks and open space, there's none for this year. There's 150,000 in next year. We usually have done it, I think, every other year.
Well, that seems more than fair, so I wouldn't want to take
About
anything away.
75,
Yeah, I agree.
Contract for the townwide transportation study, that was signed.
Just was, yep. No money has been spent. That project's moving forward.
I can't remember what the stormwater drainage, what's a discontinuation?
Disconnects, yeah.
Disconnects.
Yeah, we approved that last year, and that's, as part of our MS4, we were,
That was it, okay.
yeah, as part of the MS4 work, we're required to do some stormwater disconnects around, and so again, I deferred engineering on the specific plans, but that
No, it
work
looks like
is
that'll
underway.
be used, but we don't want to take it away, it seems, so.
Right.
There's not much in here to take away, it seems.
Yeah, I think the bigger, comparing the two lists, and as Jim said, I think, it's really about closing out some of those older capital projects, reallocating, reauthorizing over to some of our other capital projects, so we're not adding to the debt burden, keeping us under that red line we had on the chart earlier, and I think that's really the way to do it going forward.
Can you just, do you know what, there might be a question for Vin, the last one, the 23 capital planning and building assessment?
So I've been surprised that it hasn't been spent. That was now 3 years ago in the capital budget. We were looking for as I was saying, we use very heavily our town side version of that, of non-specific, but
buildings, is that-
it's really capital. It's planning. It can be design work, it can be engineering work in preparation. So that there was a concern by the council, but I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, that some of these projects would come with one number, and then the next year the number's vastly different. And we wanted to have projects designed so that you feel like it's a pretty solid number. We know that's still imperfect, and sometimes we've had cases even recently where the cost estimates from design plans just weren't accurate to what you ended up getting in the bidding once they're finally bid. But we wanted to get, better and better sense. So that's why we had that non-specific money. So we were presenting capital plans that were a little more shovel-ready or designed on the town side. That year I went through and zeroed out probably 5 Board of Ed requests for these kind of smaller planning account money. And in exchange, we said that year, you can have a non-specific one like the town has if you want to do design out of it. But I will say, we're here planning the fiscal 26 budget, and that was a 23 budget. So I'm still surprised
They forgot they had
I
it.
think they've forgotten that.
Could we take that money and reapply it to maybe if we need any consulting on the reuse of the school buildings that are?
Absolutely, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
we might need some consulting support there. I don't think there's anything allocated for that, but.
As Jim just said, I don't think they remember they had it. So I think we can do with it what we would like.
Just a
They've
thought
got so
here,
many
'cause we gotta
projects,
get
I don't know how
into
they
that
can keep
sooner
track
than
of
later.
everything.
All right. This-
Jim's on fire.
Sean, can we make sure we send these to Fiona and?
Of course, yeah. I'll email them around. Yep, and I can send them to, as I did last year. I'll send them to Vin and Jeff so they have them in advance too.
Just cover that one up though.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Cover that last one up. That's it. Don't remind them.
Sure, they'll
Jim,
understand.
delete.
Yeah.
Again, you guys know this is recorded, right?
I know.
Maybe they won't watch it.
All right, anything else that you have for us that you want to,
Not on capital. I know Jim has a little bit more, although again, it's up to you how you want to spend the rest of the evening. We have, I think, as promised, a little more updated information on department revenues.
Department revenues.
That's one thing we could go through.
Yeah.
I also have a chart that I briefly put up when you touched on it at the end, Peter, it's just more edification, but I have some comparative current mill rates to comparable towns, just to sort of, we could have a brief conversation, or I could put it back up on the screen again, just to sort of see it, as I think I tried to say, we are in good company, I guess for lack of a better word, with respect to our current mill rate to our comparable towns, even as our mill rate is proposed to increase. So I did print copies of that, and I was going to put it on the screen if you want to have that kind of just brief conversation. It's not necessarily an answer, or doesn't generate any revenue or close the gap, but it at least I think compares us as other towns are kind of announcing where they are with their budgets over the last few days too.
Are you gonna hand that out to us too, Sean, or you just
I
gonna
can
put
do
it-
that if you'd like. It's whatever you guys would like to do.
Yeah.
Or forget, can you share the mill rate calculator with everybody?
Oh yes, I will. Yep. I was gonna email that around.
If you wanna look at department revenues, maybe you can
Put it up on the screen
too.
For some reason, it zoomed me out.
Is there 3 or 2?
I think there's maybe a bunch there.
Would you, just throw one to Andrew and hand me one to give to Noel as well.
If you got one.
At least we're not hammed.
Some of this takes a little explaining, so I would like to do that quickly, but, oh, good.
Wallingford, what was it? Wallingford just announced 19% increase?
That was the mayor's suggestion, yeah.
So,
They just had their reassessment this year though, too, so that's,
Oh, their reval, you mean?
Reval, yeah.
yeah, so that's a good,
Yeah, isn't reval fun?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably a good sort of segue here. I'm trying to zoom in where it shows enough, but not too much. So I just was going through an exercise, and actually Andrew and I sat down and kind of took a more updated look at comparable towns. There wasn't an exact science to this. We used towns that are either comparable from an educational standpoint, at least with the DERG B qualification, but also those that we felt were more comparable to, so not an entire list of DERG B, not like Greenwich or others. Those that if you wanted to sell your home in Cheshire, and you see up here I have assessed value, the average assessed value in Cheshire is $297. So that means a house that's worth about $20,000, I think it is. And if you were to sell your house and buy the exact, valued house, that's why I'm not including Greenwich or others. You wanted to move to a different town.
Never
and-
include Greenwich.
and- right.
or New Canaan.
But then I included towns that are geographically comparable, right? So nearby, all of the bordering towns. And what I did is just sort of take that list, include just a few facts about them. One, of course, being fiscal 25 mill rate. That's their mill rate today. That's our 27.46. Every town is looking at a change to that mill rate this year. In many cases, that will be an increase to their mill rate. I put in the next column though, because reval, of course, makes this very hard to compare when you have this rolling reval that we do in the state of Connecticut. And so I colored kind of intentionally dark orange here. Those that are going through reval for what we call October of 24, that's the 24 reval. That means this budget year, they're first incorporating new reval values. That was us last year. That's why we're a 23 town. You see in green, green means we don't have to do it again for 4 more years.
Yeah.
And as you'd expect, right, even with some comparable towns, the 23s are kind of clustering higher up because they have absorbed that difference from the new values we've experienced over the last 2 or 3 years to those that were 5 years prior. Our last reval was 2018, before 23. And then again, I just included if they were DERG B or not, just to kind of have another data point of comparison. We just mentioned Wallingford. They're here, their current mill rate, just under 31, but they are going through reval. But I think, as you've heard, they're even with the reval, reduction, they're looking to pull their mill rate down probably, I think, to 24, 25. But I know there's been some talk and chatter about how even with that, they're going to have a large tax increase, something we experienced last year. But as we've also talked about before, I would put our services up against Wallingford when it comes to trash collection and a whole host of other factors.
So they don't have trash buckets?
They do not. No, you got to pay another 400. What is it? 450, Noah? She knows.
Yeah.
450, I think.
But your
cheap
electric rate
electricity.
is very low.
Yeah, the electric rate
My
is-
mom swears by that. Yeah.
They'll always have the electric rate above
And the
us.
power never goes out.
So
Yeah.
yeah, again, this is an inexact science. It's not intended
Yes.
to be. It's not proof of anything. It doesn't make the tax bill increase that we're proposing any less painful. I totally understand all of that, but it does kind of compare to what you would experience if you said, "That's it. I want to move to fill in the blank." It at least gives you a way to compare. So to put population here just as a data point, and then our current average taxes, which is just this amount here. You can change it if you want. And then if you were in any of these other towns, again, just remember with their what I call last year's mill rate, this is an unadjusted mill rate, whether they would be higher or lower. This does not mean that's what their tax bill is exactly, because they're going to have a different average valued house.
For the average, okay.
But it's just using Cheshire's average and what if you wanted a comparably priced house in those communities, what you'd expect to pay. And so I put the 27.46 here, as we'd expect. We're on the lower end because we went through reval last year. The proposed is 31.16, so I added that just to see the difference. And so as you start to see, I mean, one way to look at it, some of the towns down here with higher mill rates, with the exception of maybe, right, the 24s, you're gonna expect North Haven and
Those will come
Prospect
down.
to come down. Remember, we were 3509 before we came down, so North Haven, not far off from us where we were. I would expect them to come down. Again, I'm sure they've got plenty of budget pressures, not to oversimplify their budget, but I would see them coming down to 27 or 28. So, you're going to see some towns, but then supported with large commercial bases and other things that have allowed them to do so. But when you see,
Weathersfield's the scariest. Weathersfield's kind of the scariest one of the group.
That-
They revalued
us,
and
Yeah,
still at
and
43.
are still.
But
Yeah.
here's the thing, though. Even with Wallingford, increasing to 19%, their average tax bill would be like $6,800 versus, it's not really 91. Their average tax bill.
and Wallingford's
Yeah.
a lower
Yeah.
cost, I think overall. But
Yeah, so I think, you when you're comparing it to Cheshire numbers, it's a little bit tricky because it's not exactly the same.
No, right. No,
I mean, 6,800 versus 9,100 is a big difference.
Right. So, and so then anyway, but you do see some of the towns around here, and especially those that don't have reval for another couple of years. Your Glastonbury's, your Simsbury's, your South Windsors. This is not going to drop. In fact, in some of those communities, we know they're going up, even higher. So, again, I guess it's just an order of magnitude sort of comparison to sort of the company we have. And as we, again, hopefully get this number lower and lower, we'll find ourselves, maybe in this ballpark. You can see it's kind of.
This is very helpful, Sean.
Yeah, because I would like to see another column with what their average taxpayer is paying as well, just to have an idea in terms of dollar amounts, because I don't think people care about numbers. They want to know what's the bottom dollar amount that we're paying compared
Isn't
to
that
all these.
the average? Oh.
Well,
Compared to a house in Cheshire.
It's compared to the value of a house in Cheshire, but I guess one way to look at it though is if you the only challenge with doing, because I was starting to go down that path. First of all, it's hard to get that data
Right.
from every town
Yeah.
as to what their average property is. But you could come up with a.
But like
average
Madison,
value.
their average house might be a lot more than what Cheshire's is.
Well, that's the problem. Is as you
so-
start to
So they got a 22 mill rate, but their houses are,
Right.
700,000.
Right, that's where you want. That's where I wish it was easier to grab that information. And I can look a little further and see if we can at least use, there's information off the state websites that are maybe a year or two old, but you can kind of approximate with them. But just to your point, you really want to compare tax bills, and I agree that, Madison, Guilford, they're certainly being helped by the fact that I guarantee their average assessed valued house is not $297,000. So
Yes.
it is probably a false, impression to say their average tax bill is $7,000. It's not. I'm not. That's why I'm just saying,
No.
if instead you moved to Madison and said, well, I've got this, 415,000, the 297,000 assessed, what is it buy me? It might buy you less house, but
Right.
at least then your tax bill would be closer to that number.
I think this is better this way because it's apples and apples.
It is a little more, in one area it's apples to
Right,
apples,
if
in
you
the other
wanted
area
to-
it's not
if
taxable.
you wanted to take
taxable.
your 420 and cash out
Yeah.
and buy a 420 somewhere
That's what you'd
else,
be paying tax
what
on.
it would be.
Right, exactly.
No, this is a big help, Sean.
Yeah, just to think, 425.
In Madison, the 420.
The question, Sean, is how do you have time to manage?
Yes.
You gotta buy a
When do you have
one-bedroom
time
ranch.
to manage the lucky town?
Lots of them.
Because you do more technical stuff. I don't know how you fit all this in, to tell you the truth.
Thank you, John. No.
I really don't.
Just
I mean,
Spreadsheets.
He's
come
an
on,
Excel
just
wizard.
spreadsheets.
What's that?
I know,
So
I
he's
don't
Excel-
have the
he's
Excel
really- he's
I
skills.
Excel
do
wizard.
love Excel.
Yes,
We go way
it
back.
is a wonderful
Excel and I-
tool.
Well, thank you for this.
Of course. Okay, and I'll email this around too, just I'll give you a whole package after that. Okay, and then you want to go back to the mill rate worksheet, or did you, oh, sorry, do you want to do?
No,
Not really.
we wanted to do
Department
the,
Not really?
Kind of knock it out. I
Yeah,
don't know where we're
Jim's-
gonna go with
Jim's
that,
stuff
but maybe
with
just so
department
Sure.
revenues.
we can.
Alright, so I have that in the workshop right here.
Sorry.
No, just doing it. Knocking it out.
There we
I was gonna say, yeah, that,
go. Slow. So Jim, do you wanna take it
Yeah,
from here?
so just to refresh on how this all works, is we look at the last 5 years to kind of come up with where we are this year, now that we're 9 months through the year, through the end of March. So that left-hand column is where we've been at the end of March for the last, 5 years, and this year, fiscal '25.
Okay, so
Just to
that's
kind
what
of get a
this is.
sense of where we think, based on the historical average of how much has been collected through the 9 months, where we'll be at the end of 12 months. So just using building official as an example, we've
Yeah.
collected $1,329,000 through the end of March, a couple days ago. If I annualize that based on 73.05% of the year collected, which is the average amount collected through the end of March through the last 5 years, you could, I guess, argue that we'll end up at around 1.819 million. So that might correspond to or not correspond to what was projected by the department. I think they actually projected a little bit higher than that. But this is just an exercise to kind of see, based on the last 5 years, where we'll end up. And then compared to, fiscal year '26, that's that right-hand column, town manager recommended, Sean put in 1.1 million. And every year we've kind of gone through this to see, is there anything we could push a little bit? And there's reasons, obviously, why we might be only at 1.1 million next year, but, can we add a couple 100,000 there? I guess that's what this all comes down to, this exercise. And I have to admit, building department is probably the hardest one to predict, because if the revenue comes in June, it's this year's revenue. If it comes in July, it's next year's revenue. So.
You'd have to have things in front of the land use commissions now to get it in for next year. Do we know how busy they are right now?
We have a lot of single-family homes right now in Blackberry. There's
6 site plans that are.
Any
at
big
the
industrial
office.
projects or anything that are in front of the land use commissions now? No.
So then that number might be right or maybe too high.
I mean, I think there could be some stuff that still comes in, but if it's gonna get in next year, it's gotta be already started to, because by the time they get it approved. and
So you
then
can
they
see
get
the history
building
there
permits
too.
and
Those
stuff.
are actual numbers in column C. Recent years have been pretty good, but there's been a lot of development in recent years, and it's not just the north end. It all started, I think, right here with the health center, and there's been some big projects up in the industrial park, and
Yeah, but
Yeah.
clearly what makes me nervous, I know this was a COVID impacted year, but
Yeah.
even the first year after, people started doing more, there's more investment, people were doing more projects, even just, yes, there's a lot of these are new construction and things, but some of these are just home
Yeah,
deck
improvements.
projects, pool, oh my gosh, remember with pool permits were 4 times the amount we had ever received in
Yeah.
the first year of COVID.
Well, Sean, do you feel comfortable with that number, 1.1?
I mean, that's why I chose it, I guess, but I could be convinced to increase it a little bit. But as Jim said, it's really hard to know. I mean, we do know of, right? We know of some efforts. Certainly, there's, across the street from Stonebridge, there's an effort that we're hoping would be maybe pulling permits. I don't know. It's aggressive to think they'd be pulling permits in the next
Year.
Yeah, well, it won't be
Years?
for this coming year, though, I mean.
Yeah, probably not. Well,
Like
yeah.
John just said, I mean, they'd be in, they're already in there, it doesn't sound like there's a lot in there right now.
Right. So,
I'm just concerned that might be too high. Looking at the previous years,
yeah, although 23 was a pretty it wasn't. It was busy.
We
but it
had,
was not,
yeah,
it
we
wasn't-
had.
Isn't that when all the-
hadn't
all the
started
townhouses
knocking it
started
out of
getting
the
built?
park yet.
We had some. Yep. Yeah. So again, it's just hard to say. I mean, I think
There could be some stuff too that was projected to come in this year that might not, and might materialize in next year.
it's always tough
So
to
we can come
predict
back,
what your
yeah.
revenue's gonna be on things like this, because you don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
so.
it's so hard.
Certainly
Yep.
someone I think just to consider just because of the size of it, and
It sounds like one we can't really move up on, so.
No, I wanna
and we
move
can always
on.
come back to these, right? That's certainly. Town clerk is a similar situation. We thought long and hard about this one. I mean, she's pretty consistently. They've hit again the same exercise. There's probably free
Yeah.
things here.
so again, you projected, or you went with 798, 500, but, the average over the last 5 years is 809, and we're looking pretty strong this year at 846, so.
About right.
That's probably about there. Certainly not
Pretty
gonna-
specific there with the 500.
Oh, it's much, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember why.
Yeah.
Jim might have done that. It's very specific.
But could you go another 25,000 there? You probably could if you want to nitpick some of these.
But you're not doing
Yeah.
another 200,000.
Right.
Now, Park and Rec, this is an area we talked about the other day. We talked about with John on Thursday next week. There was some talk of increasing fees for programming or for field rentals, field usage. So this would be where you would end up increasing that number.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, I'd like to see the numbers that we're charging compared to other towns
Yeah.
for the fields, and, because, by you saying that we don't get nearly enough money for the upkeep of the fields when some of these groups are, using it predominantly, these fields, and
So
Nice
assuming
to
we're
pay for
gonna,
that maintenance.
assuming we are gonna try and increase the fees, is there a way to, how much could we assume at this point?
Yeah, so I'll ask John to make some estimates and a proposal for
Okay.
Thursday and some
Okay.
ideas.
Yeah.
And we just
What
get
it would
back
be.
into what we think it would be.
Alright.
Yep. So that will be one we'll come back to. Police
Couple
department.
$1 million would be good.
Yeah, a couple million. Exactly. I know, it all seems very. We're gonna get there incrementally.
we added 5 million onto the police department yesterday.
We did.
That's
Let the
right.
record show. Right, Jim. This is the same that if we increase the.
Same situation, right? I forget, was it 35,000 we
It
were
was,
thinking, so.
Well, we were gonna ask them to increase the costs of using the vehicles or something.
Right. So that was going to generate. I think the estimate was 35,000. So if we put that at.
Oh, I thought it was more.
I think
Yeah,
we got to land
I
on
mean,
that. We'll get a.
Like $50, I
Specific.
don't know.
What are we charging now?
35
35.
an hour.
We were going to go to.
You're gonna go to $42.60, I think is what you said.
So like carry the one. So we'll. So we'll put some assumption in here. We'll confirm a good number there before we go ready to adopt anything. Let's see what this one. We'll come back to that. Public library is not gonna probably balance the budget.
Yeah,
Bring back the
the
fees.
next few are gonna be.
Yeah.
They're probably.
Animal control, solid waste.
What's this one?
Public Works is an anomaly a little bit. You only put in 2, Sean, but I think that's based on what we know. I think subdivisions, right? They get these
Oh yeah, subdivision
windfalls.
fees. Yeah.
And there's been 1 or 2 subdivisions every year in the last few years, but I don't believe we know of any that are in the pipeline for fiscal 26.
When you say fees, what do you mean? Is it a 1-year deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like a one-time.
Blackberry is in the subdivision?
What is it
In
for?
this year's.
Is that what
They
we
must have-
already paid that?
What is that fee
Yeah.
for, Jim?
What's
So
it
what
for?
is the fee for that you would get from, what is it for?
Gosh, I
From
don't
the
know if
developer?
it's something
It's
engineering
called a
wise.
subdivision fee, but I'm trying to remember, it's a public works. I'd have to find
Because there are other subdivisions under construction, right? They're,
We got fees and planning
that's
for
why these-
subdivisions too, I think, and
Yeah,
so
that's
that
kinda
number
go
should
hand
be
in hand.
back up, right? I mean,
Well, do we know of any for next year, I guess?
The question is, when does that accrue?
Yeah, that's why these have been high, because there have been a number, like 1 or 2 each year. But when we don't have any, like in 22, it looks like, you gotta.
I think there's gonna be some other subdivisions that'll be built next year, so
So we could increase that.
I think it's worth.
Okay,
20,000?
I think
22.
so. Yeah, I think so.
22?
Yeah,
Or
'cause that
22.
gives us 20 grand.
22.5.
I'll go back to,
22.5.
I think there's some other.
Do I hear?
I'll go back to Merrick.
I don't have my
You know.
gavel,
I
I
don't know what
can't,
the-
I
don't know what
can't
the fee is
auction it.
for, but I mean, I think there's other ones that I'm aware of are likely to come forward, so.
Is it a fee that they pay when they apply, like with?
I believe
planning
that's the
and
It
case.
is, but I'm not sure why it's public works revenue.
Yeah.
Must have something to do with the road construction bonding or
yeah.
something and inspection.
Accepting
for
a
the
road, yeah. If Merrick is in.
Well, yeah, because doesn't Merrick have to go up and figure out, inspect before the asphalt's put down and
Yes.
measure and all that
Yep,
stuff? So that's all.
done, yeah. So maybe that's a fee, okay.
Moving on, planning and zoning. Same next week. Whoa, I just zoomed in. There we go.
I think that's kind of the same situation, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
there's nothing this year, right?
It's pretty low, a little lighter here.
Yeah.
But those again, they're, you know, it's not like they get money every month. Those are kind of lump sum amounts. And I thought they also pertain generally to subdivisions.
You can see this year, they're cut in half.
There we go. Yep. Yeah,
Since
you
it's
just
supposed to
don't
be
know.
application fees, zoning application fees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And you'll see this, I mean, in 23, for instance, at this time, they collected 34,000, but ended the year with only 39.
Yeah.
Whereas last full year, 19,000, but then ended the year with 31. You know, you just, it's a little
Yeah, and they got 11, they got
Right.
almost 50% of or
I don't know if Mike Glidden could add some color to that at this point. I mean, it's been a couple of few months since they gave us these numbers.
Not much.
It's not much. Go on
Yeah.
The tin can.
a little bit there. We'll make a proposal there. Senior services and youth activities.
yeah.
Same, relatively small.
Why did you go so high on that if it doesn't seem to have even gotten close to that?
Yeah. Yeah, Jim, why do you go so high?
You know, it's gonna be a lot more seniors.
Why are you punishing these?
Yeah,
Gonna make them work harder?
Yeah.
Wishful thinking. It's a very active senior center.
Still, that's.
And the youth activities
pretty-
is a big number, but then you're going back down. Why is it so big all of a sudden in 25 compared to other years? That's odd.
yeah,
that is.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look at that.
Yeah, that looks funny, doesn't it?
Yeah, that looks strange too.
Okay.
Double check.
I'll check it. I did kind of review these earlier today, so
That's all right. They're not big numbers anyway, Jim, so it's not
No,
that
but
big a deal.
that's just an oddity why this year is such a.
yeah.
This one I'm really happy to say because
Yeah.
we really challenged Joanne last year with
And
the new
she knocked
location.
it out of the park.
And she's on her way. So
Wow, that's impressive.
if you remember, I think we upped. That's the most revenue Arts Place has pulled in ever.
Well, she
And,
was kind of using part of that, I guess, to fund the new admin, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, in part, right. Yeah, so we have the additional part-time admin there. So, but nonetheless, I think on their way with the first full fiscal year here, collected 140 and on our way to 176. So, I think we're keeping it around that target, but that's good to see.
So investment income, I you know,
Oh yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have somebody in my office take another look at that, just to refresh on where rates have gone in the last couple of months, if that, you know, leans us one way or the other. Knowing that we have a lot of investment this year because of that 60 million. which we do take into consideration when I came up with that 3,160,000.
That's why it jumped up.
Yeah,
We have a lot of cash.
we do a very detailed kind of cash flow based on average capital outlay every month, and when we get our tax collections, you know, July and August, we're kind of cash heavy. So, yeah, we put a lot of thought into that.
Oh, rates aren't going down, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe there's some wiggle room there. I want to take another look at it though.
Think you can go to 7 million on investment?
And then the miscellaneous revenue we talked about last meeting as well. The canceled encumbrances, I think, is a big piece of this, Jim. I mean, it's a host of things that are.
Yeah, well, that's why I dropped it, because they significantly decreased their.
Yeah, so these are years where the Board of Ed had
Canceled encumbrances.
higher canceled encumbrances. This is that carryover funding that they sort of do, and it comes back to us, at least some portion of it comes back to us as canceled encumbrances in the year. It comes miscellaneous revenue. Should almost have its own category, honestly, separate from miscellaneous revenue. But as Jim said, they're changing. I think you said last time that their indication is they're going to have less canceled encumbrances going forward. Something I know we all said we were going to just talk with them about on Tuesday when we have the meeting. But for now, that's the.
This is another police line? I thought we just,
That's special duty.
isn't that what we were just talking about earlier? With the per hour rate? No? It's not the same thing?
No, because that's the car rental. This is when they get loaned out to do the actual officers, not the cars.
Okay, gotcha.
So this is all money that is paid to the town for
And then
just the officers.
we'll pay it back out.
I was gonna say, but doesn't that then get turned around and get paid to the officer? Is it really revenue? I'm just curious. Is it, with the special duty, you know, we take it in, right, as special duty?
That's the administrative fee.
Oh, okay. So that's not the part that gets paid to the officer. That's the
No.
part that we collect for
The
the
part
admin.
that pays the officer gets washed out, goes away, yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's why I was thank you, because I was just curious where's the revenue coming from? But it's the administrative fee.
And is there a reason why you increased it since the last couple of years? It was, I mean, that one year was, I think, when GoNet Speed was going through town, right?
I think we kind of just took the average there, the 5 years. It's really kind of hard to project that one.
There's been a lot of stuff going on recently, so. Hope springs
Yeah, I have
eternal.
seen Frontier going around, so maybe they'll
Yeah.
start doing it.
I mean, I usually check with Jeff Sutherland over there, just to know if he knows of anything, but, yeah, I think it was kind of like status quo, we're not sure.
Does that include fees we cook? Because I know I've heard that we do some work in like Naugatuck and other places too. Does that include? There's an administrative fee, obviously, when we do in other towns as well. Correct? Are we sending officers to other towns? To
Yes.
do-
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that does include everything.
Okay.
Naugatuck, Southington. I think those are the
Two big ones.
two big ones, yeah.
Thanks.
And then education department tuition. Yeah, a little bit of fluctuation there.
And it fluctuates because that's mostly, I think, special ed situations.
Can't
where they
increase
charge
that to get
fees.
closer to the average by 20 grand or
Yeah,
something?
probably could.
Maybe to 190 at least.
I like that.
What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I don't know if they know in advance of next year whether that population's going to increase or not.
189?
Yeah.
What?
You gonna do 189? I'm just kidding.
But I mean, you could argue with the average, right? The historical average.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this
I
is-
think that was the number they threw out at us in their book. But probably being a little conservative, maybe.
And I think that's it before you get to the levy, which.
I know somebody asked the other night about the rentals.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That one.
So you could see, through the end of March, that column B.
0?
They hardly have
I can't
anything, and they
understand
haven't
that at all.
collected, or at least not recorded anything, which I
don't understand that at all.
How is that possible?
I mean, between the football field, the
Basketball leagues. you
basketball
got-
leagues and stuff, I know Park
Well,
and Rec
if you
uses
look at it though, traditionally, most of it is starting in the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So is
so
the rev- is it
I'm
going
hoping
to
that's the
Park and Rec
case and I'm
instead
not
of
sitting on
schools?
checks for months on end and not depositing.
But
them.
like
That's
C-
right.
If
Remember
CYB
that, yeah.
uses like Doolittle Field or something like that, do they have to pay for that field?
So they book them. This is the problem that dates back 5 or 6 years ago, when we had travel basketball and other organizations come to the council
Right.
complaining about the fees
Yeah.
Right.
because they don't want to book straight through the Board of Ed because they charge so much more, double.
They
So
book
they're
it through
booking
Park
through
and
Park
Rec.
and Rec,
Right.
and we're at this point actually almost losing money because
Yep.
we are still, the rate that we passed when the council had that change was $15 an hour, which is now less than minimum wage. So we're sort of subsidizing these groups. So we've had them take a look at those fees. I think this year they're going up, but it's only barely covering our costs. But that's because the Board of Ed doesn't charge Park and Rec to use their gyms. So these groups are able to book through Park and Rec at a preferred rate.
What about like ticket sales, for?
That was a Rob Orris deal.
What about like ticket sales at football games and basketball games? I mean, does that go into there somewhere, or do they keep a separate fund on all their sports ticketing funds and?
I do not know where the ticket sales go. I don't know, Andrew, if you know that by any chance, but I know that there's the $1 fee that goes for
There
turf
is, yeah,
replacement.
there's an account, I think it's.
I don't know if there
Allegedly.
is.
Yeah, allegedly. I'd like to know how much
Oh,
that.
it does. I
How-
see it.
It has
It's in
80,
there. No, it was like, I don't know, 70.
80,000?
Good, we could put 5 yards of turf in now.
Yeah. But that's, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what the expectation was because that's 55 or 60,000
We did the math.
spectators. I mean, that's
Yeah,
more than I would have expected.
in 10 years.
Maybe it should have been a
$5.
$5 church. We're trying to get to 500,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that $1 is going into that's in our audit. It has a special turf fund in our audit, but where the rest of the revenue goes, I don't know. Maybe it's in. Well, it can't be in that line, but unless it's in this line.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to find that out. Because I know, people go to football games and they're paying, what, $5, $10 to go in or whatever, especially if it's the Southington game is at home. I mean, there's a lot of money coming in at that gate, and, and I know all the parents whose kids pay to play. I mean, that's a whole separate account, I'm assuming. Their athletic accounts are all.
Yeah, that's different than
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, wasn't sure about revenue. Now, the Board of Ed doesn't pay the town to use the new field at Bartlett or anything, but,
$58,000 in that turf fund. Yeah, good questions. I think certainly and we're still meeting with the Board of Ed on Tuesday, right?
Yep.
In advance of the meeting, so we can surely ask them.
So I had to leave the room for a minute, but did you, Park and Rec, how much comes through Park and Rec? I must have missed it.
Oh, up above the Park and Rec revenue.
Yeah.
So we just kind of put a placeholder. Well, I haven't put any numbers in yet, but we talked about how we're gonna have John come on at our meeting on Thursday night with I'll talk to him about some possible fee adjustments for field rentals and others and what he would expect to generate. So this would be the number we would right now. 437 is the number we came up with, sort of
Based on
just
where
tracking
we were, yeah.
history and then post-COVID and
So
rentals and
it's a
pavilions.
substantial amount of fees that come out of Park and Rec.
Yeah.
I didn't know, it's a big number, right? That's a big number.
Yeah.
Programs and everything else.
Pavilion rentals, programs is huge.
And is that
Summer
increased now
camps.
because of the new turf field rentals?
It's not that we haven't really charged. We have had no one but local groups using the turf field
Oh, is that
so
right?
far.
Okay.
Last year, especially because the construction at Bartlett was still ongoing, we didn't want groups, throwing a ball over into a construction site and running out there. And so we had groups that we knew and trusted. So I don't believe there's been. I could be wrong. I don't believe yet there's been any turf field rental specifically income. The big piece, of course, summer camps, things like that. It's a reminder that as we go through the Park and Rec budget, you'll see some line items, actually some that I tried to trim back, and John had to remind me when I sat with him that some of those expenditure items have revenue offsets because, you know, if you're deciding you're not going to run a certain week of summer camp, you can't just take the expenditure cut. You got to take the revenue loss because you're not operating, right? And so that funnels through this account here.
Thank you.
So we'll get an estimated number here with some fee adjustments from John. So I think that's it for departments. Jim,
Yeah, the
is
rest
there
is,
anything else?
is pretty
Just
much
tax levies.
taxes, which I
Yeah.
don't think you would have always said. Interest and liens and prior year levies, we did, I think, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Before I will touch base with Anne Marie to see if there's anything there, but
And some of these are mill rate sensitive,
I
right?
think this was the year where she did a lot with the tax liens.
Yeah.
And she's got another one scheduled in June.
Yeah.
So I don't know of any at this point. Didn't seem like there was that much left on the table after these liens.
Correct.
All right, well, that's
Okay.
pretty good timing. We're at our, is there any, go ahead, I'm sorry, I
that's
cut
it.
you off.
No, that was it. That's what I have for tonight.
We're at our 2-hour limit, so. So, next Tuesday, we are 6 o'clock with, Jeff and Vin
Yep.
prior to council meeting.
Correct.
Here or upstairs?
Upstairs.
Is that yeah? Which room are we in, Noel? For the 6 o'clock portion.
Council.
Chamber.
Yep.
Would you prefer to be in here?
Oh, we have to have a budget meeting beforehand too, right?
Two. It will be pretty quick.
I was gonna say, what's,
Last year, there isn't really anything in the budget for a budget
yeah,
meeting.
has anything come in since prep?
No.
No.
Yeah, so I don't think
Yeah.
there wasn't anything really.
Yes, we may not need one. I will confirm. So yeah, and so we're looking.
Yeah, you could probably do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
So
We
6
can,
o'clock.
we'll end at 6:55, you can do a quick 5-minute budget meeting and just approve the stuff and consent and,
If it's just consent, do we even have to really do that in the budget first?
There's no requirement.
You don't have to, no.
Because I think it would just be consent stuff, right?
yeah, so
It's just
you
the
can,
tax-
you
it's
can
just the
just,
tax
you could
stuff.
just waive it then.
Yeah.
And we can discuss the item, because we're gonna
Yeah.
discuss it in council anyway.
John, I'll email you.
No one's in this room. Just the DFW has 210. So
I'm
up to you.
traveling
You want
tomorrow
Jeff
if I
in
can
here?
make some plans tonight, so I may
Your
not be
preference.
around that much, but
I don't really care, I was just wondering about the
Some
budget
point.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we don't need a budget meeting.
I'll,
we'll do
I'll start,
whatever.
Yeah.
we'll talk,
All right, we'll talk.
Do we go
if
ahead
you,
and sign
if
it
you,
all proposed for
if you have anything to
2026?
share with me,
Yes, we
I'll show
will,
you, okay.
but we don't have to do that until we do capital,
Okay. I
which
thought
is
we
gonna
were
be,
doing that tonight.
we don't have to do that until May. Cause that's not, we don't have to vote on that until like August.
Okay.
So we've got time with current capital projects.
But say we decided to push out phase 2 of Mixville, let's say.
Yep,
Wouldn't that give us another 1.2 million?
no, not on operating,
But it does
Nope.
reduce our
yeah.
debt service, but it's not gonna.
Next year.
But that doesn't
But it's not
impact-
encumbered yet, so it's not bonded yet,
Right.
so it doesn't affect, it won't affect debt service until it's actually bonded.
Correct.
Is there anybody that's not around the vacation week?
There's a vacation week? What? Nobody told me about that.
Mike's not around school vacation week.
When is vacation, school vacation? I don't even know.
It's the week of the 14th?
18th. It's
Tax-
not next
tax
week,
week.
it's the weekend after, it's the week
Yeah.
after.
We are closed on Friday. That's Good Friday.
Yep.
And then I'm just away Thursday.
Okay.
Oh, and Thursday night is
Yeah, Holy Thursday now.
Holy Thursday.
Is Passover, when's Passover? I don't even know.
That's a good question. Passover is the evening of April 12th, which
retired
is Saturday.
teachers. around,
Okay.
stay on there.
So Passover is
that's not-
Sunday.
That's Sunday.
But if we,
Accounting for
if
that.
we had to do if we wanted to do a meeting to
Something.
maybe have, I know Jeff's gone, but Vinny could be in to talk capital stuff and maybe Dan? Or do you want to wait
That's
on
fine.
that?
No.
See,
That's
some of
crunch
this
time.
stuff does affect operating. That's why I wanted to,
Yeah.
try to do this stuff anyway, but before that
That's really what
stuff.
made me think about
It's
it.
this year's.
Yeah.
Remember, Noel sent around a poll for the 15th and
Yeah.
16th, Tuesday
That's
and
right.
Wednesday. So you're already
Okay.
planning to maybe be here for one of those days.
Sent to all of us.
So let's plan on.
Is it Wednesday, Thursday?
And we'll just.
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday?
And-
Also an option.
Yeah, exactly, so, what's that?
So that's also an option.
Is it though? Is it?
I mean, it's
Not a preferred option, I know, Sean.
30%?
Uh,
I'm thinking to myself, it's.
All right,
And I'm
with
wondering
that,
if
oh,
it's-
what I
And
wanted
there's
to
probably
do, there's,
reasons
I
for this.
don't see
I wonder
anyone
if
from the
it's-
public, so I will read read into the record the email that Noel sent around to all of us today. It came in Thursday the 3rd. Good afternoon, please do what you can to make this budget as close to a zero sum gain as possible. I've lived here 60 plus years entire life, and I'm a sole resident of my home. The never-ending increases in all costs from groceries to town taxes are becoming too much to bear. I've been fortunate, but now even for me, the skyrocketing costs of everything is making it hard to breathe. Cheshire residents are going to have to settle for a few less amenities in the schools, at parks, entertainment, cultural events, the truly discretionary items. As much as I may be in the minority, we have allocated enough for the schools already, especially with 2 new schools coming online, which are or will shortly more forcefully impact taxes. No more niceties for the schools. Keep it reasonable, please. Townspeople want, but few realize there are consequences down the road, especially when federal and state funding is suddenly taken away. When personal budgets are tight, we have to cut things out. Vacations, home improvements, etc. The town must do the same. Priority should be on public safety, a solid education system without lots of extras, no new lockers, new uniforms, new fields, etc. Making sure townspeople have access to necessary services to help them stay healthy and safe. Police, road plowing in winter, etc. Somehow those of us educated in the Cheshire school system without all the wants were able to establish a solid life here in town. If you can't get a grant for it, which nowadays will be very hard to get, then it needs to go on the potential chopping block. We do not need extra spending for ancillary items that are nice to have but not necessary, at least not now. We can't simultaneously pay for federal tariffs that are going to severely burden us in every facet of our lives while simultaneously enduring increases in town and state taxes. Wait for things to settle down a bit and then we can reconsider. Thank you for your attention in reading this email. Laura Lapoli, South Brooksville Road, Cheshire. So everybody got emailed this, but since it is public comment and there's no public to comment, we had an opportunity to read it, so I
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Walsh and Mr. Veliver in that order, all in favor, and we are done. Thank you all. See you soon.
All right.